this. Okay, represents a relationship between the time a turtle walks and the distance the turtle travels. What is the unit rate in feet per minute represented in the table? So what do I have to do to find unit rate? Anybody remember?
Divide the distance by the time.
Yep, exactly. So which one did you use?
The first one.
The first one? All right, so 120 divided by 5. So what did you get?
24.
24. So that would be correct. So 24 feet per minute. Exactly. Okay? So guys, some of you have already submitted your bell ringer for the week. You have to show some work or explain how you got your answer. Okay? So just like I have work here. So here you see my work. Here I showed you my work. That's what I need to see on your bell ringer. Okay? Just giving me an answer is not going to get you credit. Okay? So those two of you that have submitted, there's 2 of you. I've put a note in there that you need to go back and show your work. All right? All right. So if you will, open your books or get Seesaw open to lesson 8.1, which is on page 263. 263. All right, so we are going to start inequalities. So inequalities can be solved the same way that you can do equations. The only difference is instead of an equal mark, we now have an inequality. So our inequality symbols that we are going to use are these. So this is less than. This one is greater than. Is there something wrong with my... Guys, if there's problems, y'all need to speak it because sometimes the chat doesn't come up for me for a while. All right, so less than, greater than. My chat still's not up, so if there's something wrong, somebody needs to say it. What's the page number? 263. All right, so less than symbol, greater than symbol. Then we're going to add, so you were supposed to learn these 2 symbols last year. We're going to add this symbol, which is called less than or equal to. And this one is greater than or equal to. Okay, so those are the 4 inequality symbols that we are going to use in this module. All right, so today we are going to solve one-step inequalities by applying properties in graph and graph the solutions on a number line. All right, so it says, suppose the lowest elevation to which the submarine shown has been tested is tested up to negative 490 meters. If it is currently at an elevation of negative 125 meters, how many meters more can it dive without going below the lowest tested elevation? All right, so let's think about that. So I can make a drawing, right? So if this is the elevation here, right? So that is the lowest point that we can go. the submarine, let's say, is here. We want to know what is the distance between there. So how would I do that? This goes back to our integer module when we talked about adding and subtracting integers. Anybody remember? So let's think about it. If I add them, right, negative 490 plus negative 125, what do I get? 490 plus 125, I get negative 615. Can I have this number? Isn't that below this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I can't add them because if I add them, I get a number that is way lower than negative 490. So what should I do?
Subtract.
Yeah. So remember, if I do negative 490 minus negative 125, we need to add,
Positive.
yeah, we add the opposite, right? So good job, Lawrence. So negative 490 plus 125. And then we have to follow the rules for integers, right? So if I have a positive and a negative, I'm really subtracting them. So now we're going to do 490 minus 125, which is 365. And we know it's negative. So they have to go another negative 365 meters to get to negative 490 meters. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? All right, so the turn and talk says, can the submarine dive 200 meters more without going below the lowest elevation? And then can they go 400 meters more without going below the lowest elevation? So can we go 200 more? Well, think about it. I'm only going negative 200 more. How far can I go?
365 meters.
Yeah, I can go 365. So negative 200
Can.
well, we could use the greater than symbol, right? Because isn't it greater than 365?
Yes, ma'am.
So we would be okay. So that would be yes. But negative 365 is less than negative 400. So this would be a no. So we'll put no, too much below, right? We can only go 365. They want to go 400. So that's too much. All right, so let's look at the build understanding. So it says a solution of an inequality is the value or values that make the inequality true. So if you notice, right, this answer here would have a lot of answers because the submarine can go from 125 all the way to 490. So it had a bunch of distances in there that would work. Not just one, there's a bunch. So that's what an inequality is. It tells you that there are a variety of answers. There's more than one answer. Okay? So it says, recall that an equation is a mathematical sentence showing that two quantities are equal. So equation, mathematical sentence showing two quantities are equal or equivalent. Likewise, an inequality is a mathematical sentence showing that two quantities are not equivalent. The meaning of inequality symbols are shown in the table. So we've already kind of gone over that, right? So greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So it says the numbered line shows x is less than 365. Note the closed circle represents or equal to in the inequality to indicate the inclusion that 365 would work. Okay? So as you can see, the dot is on 365 and it is closed. So in order to be a closed circle, it has to have that equal mark under the inequality. Okay? It's telling me that x is less, so that means all my values have to be this way. Okay? And so we knew that 200 was in there, and it's further this way, right? So even though it's not on my number line, 200 will still work. So that's what that means. All right. So a submarine is at sea level, and it descends with a rate of change of negative 10 feet per second. Write an inequality to represent the time t it takes the submarine to reach the elevation of negative 140 feet or deeper. Okay? So negative 10 per second. So we're going to let this per second equal t. Okay? So negative 10 t is less than or equal to negative 140. Okay? So this one's a little tricky because of that word deeper and because that it's negative. So if I substituted, so if I said t is 14, right? And I substituted in, I would get negative 140 as less than or equal to 140. If I said t is 15, I would get negative 150 is less than or equal to negative 140. So you would think that because it says deeper, that my inequality sign would be greater than or equal to. But because of the negative, we have to make the inequality sign this way because this negative is less than this negative, even though it is deeper, right? So this is deeper with the negative. So that one's a little tricky because of the words and the symbol and the negatives. So we kind of already wrote 3 values that will make the inequality true. So we already said t could be 14, right? So that gave me negative 140 is less than or equal to 140. The second one we said is 15. So that would be negative 150 less than or equal to negative 140. And then I could use, I don't know, could I use 100? I could say t is 100, and that would give me negative 1,000 is less than or equal to 140. Okay, so to show you something that wouldn't work, so what if I said t is 13? Well, 13 times negative 10 is negative 130. Is negative 130 less than negative 140? And that would be no, not a true statement. So you will find that when we start solving inequalities, you're going to need to substitute the values back in to see if the statement is true. And if the statement's not true, that means your inequality symbol is wrong. Okay? So that's sometimes how you can tell if the inequality symbol was set up right or not. Okay? All right, so we're going to put a little cross through that because that one doesn't work. C says, solve the inequality in part A by writing a simple inequality that describes all the numbers that will make the inequality true. So I'm going to rewrite it. So negative 10 less than or equal to negative 40. So I said that we are going to solve these the same way we do an equation. So it's negative 10 times t. The inverse is to divide. Okay? Now, we haven't talked about this, but we will in the next couple lessons. But when we divide by a negative, my sign changes. So my answer is t has to be greater than or equal to 14. So as you can see, 14, 15, 100, all of those numbers worked. Okay? Because of this right here, it is going to be a closed circle. And I'm going to put it right at 14. And since it is greater, my arrow is going to go in the greater direction. Okay? All right. So it says, graph the inequality in part C, which we did. Can the submarine reach an elevation of negative 140 or deeper if it's less than 14? So we've already shown that. So I'm going to draw an arrow here, and I'm going to put C example. And then that would be that example that we did up there. Okay? All right, so E says, how is solving negative 10t equals negative 140 and negative 10t less than or equal to negative 140 alike? So what did we do that was the same? So what did we do to get t by itself? What did I do? Yeah. So the thing that is alike is you divide both by negative 10. Okay, what is different is equation is one answer, which would be t equals 14, and in the inequality we get multiple. Multiple answers for t is greater than or equal to 14. Okay? Alright, so do I need to pause for you guys to be able to copy it?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you posting these notes later because I was late? Yes. That is my goal when I get home, is to get them posted. All right, are we good?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the step it out. All right, so now we're going to go step by step. All right, so during the spring rains, the water level in the lake rises. Although the lake has a dam, when the water reaches the top of the dam, water will begin flowing over the top. Write an inequality that expresses how much more the lake can rise R so that the water does not flow over the top of the dam. Okay? So that means the inequality that we are going to write is going to be less than. Okay? So we're at 127. I need to add more water, right, for the rise. But this has to be less than 152, and it can be greater than. But if it's larger than 152, then it flows over the dam. Okay? So whatever I add to it cannot be more than 152. So that's why this inequality is there. So we'll write that. Can not go over 152. All right, so write 3 values for R that will make the inequality in part A true. Okay, so just like solving the equation, we need to move things around. So to get R by itself, what do I need to do with that 127? Is it being multiplied?
Yeah.
It is?
I gotta add it.
Right, so it's being added. So what's the inverse?
Subtract.
Yeah, so we're going to subtract 127. So this will go away. So R equals, somebody have a calculator. 25? And this really shouldn't be an equal mark. It should be what? My inequality. So R is less than or equal to 25. So 25, it is going to be closed. So I'm going to close it. And it is less than 25. All right? So then once again, how is solving 127 plus R less than or equal to 152 the same as 127 plus R equals 152? So in both of them, we would subtract 127, right? And then the equation is one answer, inequality has multiple. Right? Because my arrow's going this way, so all those values would work. All right. So the properties of equality you use when solving equations hold true for inequalities, with one exception. When you multiply or divide by a negative number, so this is what we were talking about earlier, you must reverse the inequality symbol. Okay? Only multiplying and dividing. If you're subtracting, the symbol stays. Okay? All right, so apply the properties of inequalities to solve each inequality. So we started out subtraction. So the inverse is to add. So that is the addition property of equality. So if it's minus 3/10, we are going to add 3/10. And I don't know why they put that box way over there, but it should be 0.30 and that like that. So if we add them, we get 5 and 0 is 5, 4 and 3 is 7. Bring the decimal point down. So 1.75. So guys, on the notes, that answer is wrong. I can tell you that on the notes. So when you get the notes, make sure you correct it. Okay, on B. So what is it starting out as?
3.5n.
So what does that mean? What operation?
Inequality.
It does, but 3.5n, is it addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division?
It's subtraction.
There's a subtraction?
Sorry, it's addition.
Samir?
Multiplication.
Yes.
It was so confusing. I wanted to ask the question, but I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay. All right, so it's multiplication. The inverse is to divide. So that would be the division property of equality, because we're dividing. So that would go away, and 7 divided by 3.5 is 2. Okay, so if I was going to graph this one, let's go back and talk about this one, right? So this would be 0, 1, 2, 3. And so I don't have a line underneath here, so my circle would be hollow at 1.75, and that would fall somewhere in between 1 and 2. But m is greater, so I would have my arrow going that way. Okay? This one I did divide, but I didn't divide by a negative, right? So my sign doesn't flip. So if I was going to graph this one, this line tells me it's closed. So closed circle, and it's going in the less direction. Okay, so those are important. All right. So C starts out as addition, right? The inverse is subtraction. Yep. So we would use the subtraction property of equality. So I'm going to subtract 1/8, and I'm going to subtract 1/8. Now this one is tricky because I have a -2 and a -1/8. So what is my rule? If I have a -2 plus a -1/8, what do I do? So this is what it looks like. What do I do? If you owed me $2, and let's say 1/8, I don't know, is 12 cents. So if you owed me $2 and borrowed 12 cents, what would you owe me?
I owe like 1.75 or something.
So if
Or
you,
at least close to $2.
okay, right. So if you owed me $2, Samir, and you borrowed 12 cents, what would you owe me?
12 cents.
Yeah, you would owe me $2.12. So it's the same thing here. You would owe me 2 1/8. They're both the same sign, so we add them together. Okay? I did not multiply or divide. I added and subtracted, so therefore I don't have to flip my sign. But what do you notice that they did?
Switched it around.
Yeah, they switched it around because a lot of times, guys, when we write inequalities, we like the variable to be first. So if I read it this way, it says B is less than or equal to 2 1/8. If I read it this way, B is less than or equal to -2 1/8. So it means the same thing, we just flipped it. Okay, so if I was going to graph it, so this would be 0, -1, -2, -3. It would be a closed circle, and B is less than, so it would go in that direction. All right, let's look at D. D says we're going to multiply -1/2 times y. So once again, this one's tricky because it's a fraction. Okay? And the only way to get rid of a fraction is to multiply by the reciprocal. So multiply by the reciprocal. So that means I'm going to multiply by -2/1. So I'm going to multiply this side by -2/1. And hopefully you notice you're going to flip the sign because we multiply by a negative number. Okay? So it went from it went from less than to greater than. So I know that this will go away, and it leaves me with y is greater than negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. Okay, if I was going to graph it, this would be negative 11, negative 12, negative 10, negative 13. Open circle at negative 12, and it's greater than, so my arrow would look like that. Okay? All right, E. So if I only have an x, it's 1x. Remember that. There's like an imaginary 1 right there. And that imaginary 1 is negative. So to get rid of it, we can do one of two things. I can multiply by negative 1, or I can divide by negative 1. So either one will work, okay? And then I have to flip. So flip the sign because we are multiplying or dividing by negative 1. Because what happens is when I do negative 1 times negative 1, I get x. If I divide negative 4 by negative 1, I still get positive 4. Same thing if I was to say negative 1 times negative 4, I still get 4. Okay? All right, graph it. So 3, 4, and let's say this is 2. There's no line, so open circle, and x is greater than, so it would go in that direction. All right, F. Once again, it's a fraction. So you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to abbreviate it. So that means I'm going to make it a negative 3 over 2. And here I'm just going to bring down the 6. So this would be 6 times negative 3 over 2. And if you notice, what did they do with the sign? They flipped it. So you're going to flip the sign. This goes away. And then 6 times 3 is negative 18 divided by 2. So A is less than negative 9. So if we were going to graph it, it would be an open circle, and it is less than, so it would go in that direction. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you guys can get the notes. All right, we have 5 minutes left. So let's see if we can get through the last question. And then you guys can start with the on your own tomorrow. So guys, tomorrow I will not be online. Okay? So check the daily agenda. You're going to be working on, you're going to finish the check for understanding, and then you're going to work on the on your own. Okay? And I will post which problems you're going to do tomorrow. So all you got to do is put a thumbs up in the daily agenda so I know for your attendance that you saw what you were supposed to do. Okay? All right, so let's look at the last one, number 4. Leela is designing a rectangle table. What is the range of values for X if the area of the table is to be 12 feet or less? Okay, so that means I can't go over 12, right? So whatever I'm putting here, it can't be larger than 12. It can be equal to, but it can't be larger. We know it is the area. So area is length times width. So we're going to do x over 4 times 3. So that gives me 3x divided by 4, which is less than or equal to 12. So that's what we're going to put here. So 3x divided by 4 less than or equal to 12. All right? We have a fraction. So we got to multiply by the reciprocal. So multiply by reciprocal. So that means 4 over 3 times 3 over 4, x less than or equal to 12 times 4 over 3. That cancels, and it leaves me with x is less than or equal to 48 divided by 3. So x is less than or equal to 16. Okay, so it says give the range of values for x that are reasonable in the context of this problem and graph it. So x is anything, it's one word, right? Less than or equal to 16. So that means solid circle, and it's less than, so it's going in that less than direction. Okay? Now, this one's tricky because can I have a negative side length for a figure? No. So my arrow is not going to be a continuous arrow. So it's going to be a line, and it's going to stop at 0. And I'm going to have to make it a hollow circle because I can't have a 0 side either. Because if I was to substitute 0 divided by 4, I would get 0. And if we had that, we wouldn't even have a rectangle, right? Okay? All right, so that is what that looks like. We will talk about, you will do the check understanding tomorrow. The notes that I post will have the answers to the check understanding. So I want you guys to try it, then check your answers, okay? So once again, I will not be here tomorrow. Check the daily agenda. Give me a thumbs up on the daily agenda, okay? Any questions for tomorrow? Okay, and then what will happen on Friday is when you guys come to class on Friday, if you had any specific questions on your own, we'll answer them that day, okay, on Friday. All right, you guys have a great afternoon, and I will see you tomorrow. No, I won't. I'll see you on Friday. Sorry. And Lawrence, yes, I saw something. I just have to look at it. Okay? Have a great day. All right, bye-bye.
Oh, I also did my grade 2.
You did your what, Julian?